Hey guys, welcome back to Resist the Grind. We just got back from an awesome trip on the C&O Canal. We learned 10 things that you can use to have a better experience yourself. At the end of the video, we will sit down and talk about some of the things that went right, as well as some of the things that went wrong on our trip. So let's sit down, have some espresso, and process our trip. Thing we learned was that the C&O towpath is a choose your own adventure kind of ride. You can choose to do it fast, you can choose to take it slow, you can decide that you want to stay in hotels the whole way, you can decide you want to camp the entire way, you can cook out your meals, or you can go to restaurants. It's really up to you and what you're looking for to get out of this ride. We saw people with all different kinds of bikes, from gravel bikes to mountain bikes to recumbent bikes and electric bikes. So any bike that you have can probably do it. We opted for a combination of all three, and we'll talk about that when we talk about what we did right and what we did wrong. So let's talk about number 2. The second important thing that we learned is to make sure that you check the days of the week when you're planning your trip so that you know when things will be open. We found that some of the attractions that we were looking at going to were actually closed when we wanted to hit them. So check the times and the days that things are open so you don't miss out. We went to Fort Frederick, it was closed, but we could still walk around the fort. Some of the restaurants that we wanted to hit were closed on the days we were there. So again, it's very important to check the days of the week and when things are open. The next thing that we learned was to use the C&O app that they have from the Canal Trust. The big thing with this though is to make sure that you have good signal, because we did find out that some of the times we couldn't access it. There may be a workaround with that. The app was very helpful in planning out our trip. And along those same lines, we did take a picture of the map, which on the trail there are a number of spots where you just don't have any service. It goes to SOS on your phone. So having that backup map, whether it was printed out and laminated as we did, or also just having it on your phone to refer to, is a very good tip. The next important thing was not all wells are equal. Some of them took maybe 9 or 10 pumps to get water going, while others may take 1 or 2. At Antietam, it says that the water has been treated. However, when we used it, we filled up a bottle and let it sit for a while. There was sediment into it. So while it was treated, I definitely would still recommend filtering that water, just like the rest of the wells on the towpath. The next thing that we learned probably is intuitive to those that do bike pack or backpack very often, but we were new to this, so we found that having some kind of net bag or even just a fruit bag from oranges or onions to put your wet clothes into can make a big difference, from having the rest of your clothes all smell damp and musky to just putting them in a bag, putting it on the back of your bike, and then when you get to camp the next time, you can open them up and dry them out on a line. The next tip we have was, if it was predicted to rain the next day, we put some firewood into a Ziploc bag and even a big trash bag so that the next morning we could wake up and have some dry firewood to get our fires going. It was also nice for us to have 2 different styles of stove. I had the gas stove, traditional for camping. My brother had a wood micro solo stove, and it was nice to have 2 different sources of fuel. And it really helped because they both work differently and have different benefits. My Soto stove can cook water really quick, get it boiling. However, the wood stove was a little bit nicer to cook on because of the bigger source of the flame. So while it was a luxury having 2 stoves, I do recommend it. Next, people probably have heard this before, but the restaurants along the canal are very biker friendly. And so they give very large portions. They were very helpful, giving us water for our bottles and even sitting us near outlets to recharge our electronic devices. This enabled us actually to use less power on my battery banks and my phone and all of that than I was anticipating, but also enabled us to eat a little bit less cooked meals at camp because we were so full pretty much each evening after eating out for lunch that we ate a smaller dinner than expected. So shout out to all of those places that we hit along the canal. I'll leave links to them in the description for you. Another thing to note is along the canal, the closer you get to DC, it seems to get a little bit more sketchy maybe, or a little bit more trash along the path. When you first leave Cumberland, it felt like you were going out on an adventure into the woods. But again, the closer we got to DC, the more day campers and more crowded the path seemed to get. So it's not really dangerous, it's just something to note for your situational awareness as you're going along the path, that as you're going closer to DC, you're probably going to run into more people, and your experience is going to change a little bit more than that of being out in the woods in the middle of nature. The next tip, again, for those who are seasoned bikepackers, you may already know this, but being new to it, it was really helpful. Every morning when we woke up at camp, we just did a quick bike check. So we went through and used our little multi-tool, tightened up any loose bolts that we may find, checked our tire pressure. If we needed to, we would add air to them. It was more so on the first day or two that things seemed to rattle loose, probably because our bikes weren't used to the trails and bouncing around a little bit more with all the extra gear and weight on it. But I do think for just a couple minutes worth of work, you prevent a lot of problems that you may have down the road. Don't underestimate yourself. If you can do 10 miles, you can do 20 miles. This isn't that hard of trail. It's only as hard as you choose to make it. So just get out there, go for a ride, and work yourself up to doing 10 or 20 miles. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, get an e-bike. There are plenty of people out there enjoying the outdoors and riding their e-bikes and having a great time on the C&O Canal. Now I want to talk about what we did. We chose to camp out most of the nights. We only stayed in a lock house on the last night as a treat to ourselves for a job well done. We decided to go to Antietam Battleground. We rode around the rolling hills of Antietam, saw all of the historic sites. That was really a treat. We went to Harper's Ferry and took our times in the museum so that we could really learn about the history. Though I will say that the climb up the stairs and across over to the Harper's Ferry was quite an adventure. Each day we seemed to exceed our plans of how far we wanted to go, just because we seemed to be in better shape. The trail was in much better condition than we were thinking it would be. And so again, each day we were able to go further than we thought to, or we explored more than we had anticipated we would explore. Another highlight of the trip was actually just sitting around the campfire, talking to other cyclists, talking about adventures that they had had or places they had gone. I think a neat experience that would be missed if you do it with just staying in the hotels. Sure, we did meet people along the way, talk quick hi bye, but sitting around that campfire and just talking to other people was really enjoyable. We also did this trip on a budget. So we didn't have the newest gear, we didn't have the best tents or best camping gear. We did it on a budget. Some of our gear came from places like Amazon, Temu, and even Lidl. Yes, Lidl. That'll be an interesting video for me to make, is a review of some of the camping gear that we used. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can see that video as it comes out. So what went wrong? Well, we overpacked because we didn't anticipate such large portions at the restaurant. So we did end up with a lot of food left over. So next time we'd probably pack a little bit less food, knowing that there's plenty of places to eat some delicious food. Remember that the trail has about a 2 foot per mile drop going from Cumberland to DC. But if you want to go to any of the towns, you're pretty much going to have to go uphill to get to any town, to do any shopping. So just keep that in mind. When all's said and done, we each had about 40 pounds on our bikes. This didn't make much of a difference because again, there is that slow decline as you're going along the path. The only time it really made any noticeable difference was when we would go out of the path, venture into town. On some of those steep climbs, yes, it was probably a little bit heavy, but it did not seem unbearable. We were able to have a great time, and we probably could get the weight down with some better planning next time. Not that it went wrong, but just something to note. The path is 184 miles if you stay on the path. If you want to venture into any of the towns or see any of the historic sites, we ended up doing about 220 miles when all is said and done. Thanks for watching. I hope that you learned something that you can use on your next bikepacking trip, or if you choose to do the C&O Canal. Be sure to check out my other video where I do a walkthrough of Swain's Lock House, Lock 21. You'll enjoy seeing all of the ways they've renovated this as a wonderful place to stay. It was really a great time to spend our last night there, have a cooked meal, hot showers, and air conditioning. Please be sure to like and subscribe to see more adventure content. If you enjoyed this video, let me know. I'd also like to hear what you'd like to hear for future videos, whether it's kayaking, scuba, biking, hiking, anything like that. I'm up for my next adventure.